ניסיון לבדוק אם הקלטת עובדת, היום יום שלישי, 20 לחודש אפריל 1993. Now let's begin with, yes, it's an interview with Mr. Arie Haendler. How do you spell Arie? A-R-I. Yes, exactly. Okay.
Yes, I'm coming.
Yeah. I will just repeat very briefly the main information you gave me before in order to jump to the main issue. Arie Haendler, you were born in Germany and...
No, I was born in Brünn.
Yes.
In Brünn, and I found in Czechoslovakia, it's Brünn, 1950. I was there for 8 days, and then my whole upbringing after it was in Germany, in Magdeburg.
Yes.
I come from Magdeburg in France.
Yes, and you were active in the Zionist youth movement.
I started with being, my background was I was the socialist student movement, but I turned very early when I was still in gymnasium. My parents were religious and I was religious, and I then became one of the leading Haverim of the religious youth movement, Brit Hanor, later Machat Brit Halutzim Datiyim, and Seira Mizrahi, that was all one. And we worked together in the whole Zionist youth movement.
Yes, and you were very active in trying to get out Jewish youth and children out of Germany.
Out of Germany, to bring them basically to Palestine, but in the meantime to get them into Western Europe until...
And in 1938, after a brief stay in Palestine...
3 months where I came especially in order to help to enlarge the absorption capacity for religious youth in this country. I was then sent by Henrietta III to London, in order from London to continue these activities of rescue. I was then the director of Religious Youth Aliyah in London, where we worked together with Youth Aliyah generally, and where we also established the religious Chalutz movement.
Yes. And then after the kingdom transport...
Then we, in 1938, when among others we tried very hard to persuade the British government to get visas, and then finally the 10,000 certificate of visas were given, we then were active, when I say we, both the religious and the non-religious Zionist youth movement in complete cooperation. We established Hakshara centers for all age groups, beginning from 15 to 25, 28, means youth Hakshara and proper Hakshara throughout England, Scotland and Ireland, and they were trained there. Some of them we then later sent, that would interest you, sent in 1945. Some we sent as relief workers with British relief units to the occupied zone. Some actually went later also to the American zone, like for instance someone who's now director, Stanley Abramovitz, who's now director of joint here in Jerusalem.
He was a shaliach in the
He was a member of our movement. He wanted to become a rabbi, and instead I persuaded him to go in one of the relief units to Germany. But he went to the British zone, but he was then persuaded, because there was more work to be done, to go over to the American zone, as you know all that. And he actually then continued until today. He remained a American joint. There were those who directed the relief units into the American zone,
Yes.
and the British, the Central British Fund, together with us, we directed boys or young men, including Henry Lutzer, you mentioned, and his sister Erika, and so was the
and Judy as well.
Judy, it's even more.
I'm going to interview her next week.
That's right. You mentioned my name to her. And there's a girl, Hannah. Now her name is Hannah Landau. She's now also in English. You know?
I'm going to see her next week as well.
Yes, we'll see her next week. They're all these Hannah Landau. That's what I'm trying to say to you. These were all people. I looked at that I'm already 120 years old and not as old as almost.
Just may I ask you for the year of your birth?
Unfortunately, I told you this already. It's terrible. 1915. Terrible.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, very young.
Let's say Hannah Landau. She liked some of these others. So, and to say these were all young children at the time. We bought them, including her sister, who was also widowed, wife of, as you knew, Zvi Yaron. Herschel-Singer was.
I knew him personally.
You knew?
Yeah, I mean, I have some personal connection with Lavi. I was in Akshara myself in Lavi.
Oh, you were in Akshara, Lavi? That's interesting. You didn't tell me the whole story.
No,
Then you should know Henny's sister, who was a founder member of Lavi, Golda.
Golda,
that's Henny's sister.
Of whom? Of Henry Lonzo?
No, of Henny, my wife.
Of Henny, your wife?
Yes. It's Golda.
Okay, this is personal.
Sister Golda.
Just a moment, this must not be on the...
Then you would have also met, because he was for a time also in the relief unit, Abraham Grünbaum.
No, I didn't meet him yet. I tried to, he was ill or something was not
that. He was working at Barelam, or he had been.
But I heard his name, Shia Abramovich, I believe he's working.
I mentioned Shia Abramovich, Stanley. That's all that generation.
Yeah. This is very important for me to have more names of people.
Henry Kuhl as well.
Henry Kuhl, he was not,
Hagit.
Hagit, a very nice name. Hagit. Hagit is particularly interested over rights of works on the period 1935, yes, and
1945 until 52 or so. I mean, the first years after, in Germany.
She met Henry Lutzer, Senior, Hannah Landau.
Hannah Landau I didn't meet yet, but
Hannah Bermanrat.
She was there.
And she's the sister of Karla Yaron. Zvi
was madrich in Jerusalem. He was a madrich of our Garin.
Oh, I see. That's it. He was dealing with Herschel. It's a wonderful person. Highly gifted person.
So where were you born here in this country?
I was born here in this country, but my parents came from Germany.
Your parents from what part of the country?
From Posen, both of them from Posen, but they grew up in Berlin.
I was
born here.
What name?
Plessner.
That's it. I know that.
One was Ben Plessner?
Yes, that's my grandfather.
Really?
Yeah.
Is he older than he was? Is he alive?
No, if he was alive, he was. I have to put it over.
Ismail Plessner?
Just a moment. Ismail Plessner?
Right.
Okay. Now you were encouraging your chanichim to go to relief work in Germany.
Yes. So, no, we picked a few of those who were capable, particularly British boys like Stanley Abramovich and others, and then of course We had like Landau, etc. It was Hanna Bernadral, and we had a special department in our office in London, in the Bachat office, from where we directed. I still have my paper which we published, which I edited for many years, Hayenu. We had reports from, I haven't got it here, but it's in one of the libraries here. The special department, we called it relief department, where we set material and gave directions to our relief workers in the British occupied zone, and later some of them, like Erika Lunzel, they went to Holland, and that was all done with the direction of educating even the DPs, the displaced persons, towards Eretz Israel or Israel.
So there was an ideological motivation.
There was a completely ideological, not for the so-called the CDF people. We used the Central British Fund really more as a kind of a as a frame, but really the work was done by us. And when I said us, also Echalut. It was not only the religious. We worked closely together, but all with a clear direction towards Zionism, Israel. The only person who knew that properly, even if he was not formally one of us, was Professor Benfitch. Benfitch was really the chairman, as you perhaps know, he was the chairman of the committee which directed these activities, and we worked under him, with him, and there was complete cooperation. He was, as we say in German, for the British government, the Aushängeschild. He was the former chairman of the committee. I know today, and I don't mind saying it like this, the British authorities, on the one hand, they didn't want us to mix these activities with Zionist activities for good reasons. You know, we had the struggle with them on political issues, but in reality, they knew exactly what we were doing. And,
how do you know that?
I'll give you a small example. It was not connected with relief only. I'll give you a small example. I mentioned this from time to friends. And again, one of my jobs was to travel and to go to all these places. Now, when we sent various people, like Henny's father-in-law, Golda's husband, who was in the brigade, he's still in Lavi. He was sent from our Hachshara, from Northern Ireland, where we had a Hachshara, to the brigade, to the Jewish brigade. That was all ideologically motivated. As you know, the brigade was ideologically motivated. We did this in cooperation with Moshe Shatok, later Moshe Sharet. We sent them to, let's say, to the Lavsky, to the Exodus, to Marseille. And to give an example, when I had to fly from London to Paris, and from Paris to Marseille. Now, when I got to the airport, at that time everything was very strict. It was just at the end of the war. And when I got to the immigration officer, and he looked at my passport, he said, Mr. Haendler, where are you going to? So I said, I'm going to Paris. So he smiled at me, he said, you want to Paris to enjoy yourself? I said, yes. He said, but you're not planning to go from the Paris straightaway to Marseille to the Exodus? They knew everything. So they knew all activities, and partly they saw our letters. And it was a really funny situation. On the one hand, the British authorities fought against our Zionist activities, again for good reasons. They did not want a Jewish state. they didn't even want the Jewish brigade. That was really achieved only after a lot of struggle. And when we sent our people to the relief units, theoretically, they also were not so keen that we should send our Zionist boys and girls to these jobs. But they knew that we had the contact with the British Army. I mean, I don't mind mentioning it, because he remembers it so well. Chaim Herzog, who from time to time spent Shabbat when he was a British officer. He was, as you know, in the British when he spent Shabbat in our place in London. And he remembered, who knows, that he was formerly a British officer, obviously. But he knew, like others, as another man, John Furman, who is now here in this, he was much higher than
on the British occupation.
British occupation. He was not a reliever. He was a lieutenant colonel in the army. John Furman. He is now the chairman of the British Commonwealth Association. That was a man who was away from anything Jewish, who were then. That was my job we had in England at that time, at the end of the war. In addition to the Halutzig organization, we had an organization that Patwa, Professional Aliyah, and the man who helped to establish this Patwa organization I helped him was
Professional Aliyah and
professional and technical. What was it? Patwa, professional and technical.
Very helpful. You made this, I didn't know what it is.
I find it for you.
Yeah.
I really don't get I forget now the name.
Something Aliyah.
Aliyah. The man who helped really to establish it was Walter Etam, Walter Ettinghausen. You know who was at the time. And this John Furman, who was then Lieutenant Colonel, these are wonderful stories. I'm sure he must have mentioned to some people. He's now also not a young man anymore. He came to a meeting where I spoke to which others of professionals. You know, professional means there was one of them, for at that time was very active in the East now, of course, chauffeur here, Bear, he's now already retired, came also from England. They were all professionals, lawyers, or judges, or who by the other end had an influence on these people. And when I read one evening, I addressed one of these groups. This John Furman, who was a lieutenant colonel, just retired from the British Army, came back from the British zone. And by the way, Chaim Herzog was under him. Chaim Herzog first was captain, then he was mayor, as he was lieutenant colonel. And he then heard from me, I was then, by the way, representing the Haganah people who tried to get the right people. That was before the state was established. And then this John Furman, the piece that I mentioned, I knew because my brother was a gynecologist in London. He operated on his wife and two children. And he heard what I said about what we are planning to do in Palestine. And he then, after the meeting, came to me and said, "Look, Mr. Haendler, I'm Lieutenant Colonel in the British Army, now retired. I've got a wife and two children. If you tell me that you are prepared to take me to Palestine, to be the Haganah information about everything. Provided you, should something happen to me, that my wife and my two little children should be taken care of. Then I'm prepared to go whenever you call me. I immediately contacted at the time the Moslet here in Palestine, and of course they were very pleased. I gave that assurance on their behalf. He came to this country, immediately joined the forces. By the way, that's the interesting part. Later, Chaim Herzog became, because he was also in intelligence in the British Army, this young farmer. They got his Tel Aviv. Chaim Herzog became Lieutenant Colonel in our Israeli forces. He just became a major. And he then, the funny part was he was in charge, by profession, was in charge of the accountant. And he did his service in the time of the established state. Then he became the chief accountant of the shipping company, and then also the Statute, and later he did many other things. Now, he is now he's now the chairman for many years of the, it's called the Israel-British Commonwealth Association. They do all sorts of functions.
This brings me to a question.
That's what I'm trying to mention. That was my job.
Yes, this is very illustrative to you.
That's what my job. Because there are still people who ask, why am I not completely here? Because I continue to work there and here.
Yes. As for the Jewish Brigade, the recruitment to the Jewish Brigade from England, when did it start?
Now it started in it started when, already in the middle of the war, when earliest the war, when Moshe Shartok at that time, that's how we became very close, Moshe Sharet and I, my wife, visited our Hachshara centers. Now at that time, when Moshe Sharet, I couldn't tell you the exact year, but Moshe Sharet worked very hard to get the British government to agree to the British, to the Jewish Brigade. You know, it was very hard.
Yes, it was 1944.
That's right, it was a very hard struggle. At that time, he was, Moshe Sharet, before he received the permission, was in touch with us, Hechalutz and Bachat, because he knew these are the boys and girls whom we need, particularly boys, to be sent to the brigade. Later on would take people somewhere from Europe, but leading force, and Israel, of course, also Palestine, obviously. They with us, the so-called British boys. They were not really British boys, some were British, but usually were Germans, like my brother-in-law and others, who then together with the Palestinians and the British, with some of the European people, they then formed the brigade. But the educational work towards the brigade was done long before. But the Sharet, I remember like today, he came to our Shabbat, he came to our Hachsharot one in Bromsgrove, which is near Birmingham. They spent the whole Shabbat, and he reported on Zionism and politics. But in reality, he looked around, he wanted to find out the right type of people for the brigade. And our job was to help him in these activities. And then it was done by representatives like of Haganah, especially.
So some of the brigade, let's put it this way, it is a common knowledge that the first Jewish shlichim who arrived in the British occupation zone were not the shlichim from the Yishuv, but two groups of shlichot. There were only very few. The military, the chaplains, for example, the rabbis.
Like people from London, you must have heard Hartman and
Yitzhak Levi, yes, whom I interviewed already. And the other ones were...
Morris Jaffe, he was also involved.
Morris Jaffe? Who is Morris Jaffe?
Who established later here he died unfortunately. The Hechal Shlomo. Morris Jaffe, he was chaplain.
He was also a chaplain?
He was chaplain to also to the brigade, yes.
No, what I mean, there were those who didn't come through the brigade, but directly through the British Army.
That's right.
Like Yitzhak Levi was not in the brigade.
Correct. He was British Army, and that was Morris, and then the various others.
Can you mention other names?
I forgot there was one, unfortunately also here in Israel, the first name, Goldstein. He was a private in the British Army, a wonderful person, also accountant, Goldstein. By the way, I must try.
Yes.
I haven't got it here. Let's try it. I won't be able to help you this time. But I have to bring. See, I edited in. Actually, started already in Germany. Hagit.
Yes. This periodical.
Monthly paper.
Yes.
Which I edited until really 1954.
Yes, this should be
a very important complete set from the beginning is, I gave it to Rachel, you must know, and Kibbutz Yavne. She has the archives
in the Kibbutz Yavne. Yes.
Rachel and Israeli. She also came from London. All these girls or boys who were trained through us. Rachel Glau was her name then. Now her name is Rachel HaYisraeli. She has together with Azriel Zamosh, who I believe died. Azriel Zamosh died. They established the archives.
Yes, there is an archive of in Yavne, I know, and they have also a student.
Is one which
and do they have also a set of the Chayot?
No, whether the Maryland has, but Yavne Rachel.
Okay, I have a student who is working on it.
She's working on it. She wrote me such a complimentary letter. I send her always material. And she said that the Shema Tzair, people who come, who were also writing on this. They came to her and they found the material which I sent. See, I sent her letters and copies of letters. Because here in letters you have some.
So you have an archive there. Actually.
There is an archive.
On your name?
No, not mine. If you contact Rachel, I've got the telephone number if you want to, but it's easy. If you would, Rachel HaYisraeli. In fact, I must tell you, many people who do research records, you go to her and ask her for material. They will find quite a bit. But what I'm trying to do is, we have to see, because we can't do this all today. On my next visit, I've got to be here. When will I come to the so-called Prime Minister's Conference at the end of May? But latest I'm here.
On the beginning of
June, middle of June, we have the board of the Jewish Agency, the governor's meeting. And I must bring it here, my set of the Chayenus. And there, these Chayenus, you will find, letters from people from the relief units who wrote letters to us which we published on the work which they did when they met the Havarim in the camps. Because simply one can't remember everything. So I said, the moment I see a name, then I see learn more. Sometimes be reliable.
If I will have the possibility to...
No, I will do it. I suggest the following. Look, I'm only started giving you a little bit of information.
Yes.
By the way, time-wise, you are working on it. I mean, you are trying to finish the work, your work, or you're just.
No, I just began. I will give you a copy of it. I published. There is a first article, which is the first part actually.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
It is. I am preparing a book. But writing a book is a very long
I know. and you know, like Max Lieberman used to say with regard to painting, the art of painting is to know what not to paint.
Yes.
And I think that's with regard to a book too. that I got no problem. Everybody, my family, my friends, they all didn't walk and others, they're like, why don't you sit down and write? Because it's already nice. So I now have at home, that I did already, 13 box files. You know, but that I divided with articles and life story and lectures and blah, blah, blah. But that's already divided up into, let's say, my Russian Jewry work or my Hachshara type of work. But now comes the trouble. Now, that has to be in each box file to be into data. Yes. That's important. And then to know what to solve or to cut out, because who's interested in this rubbish?
Okay. For me, it's not...
You know just about.
Of course.
Yes, I just said to him Friday morning. He came, he still noticed me, he came to me to London, and he sat in my study for 3 days, or he couldn't get me to done, he always had to work, and he tried to pick whatever he could. But he's not satisfied.
In any case, what I suggest is, first of all, that you consider seriously the possibility of being interviewed, being properly interviewed about all your activities.
I'd like to be in touch with you.
Yes.
You give me an answer, your
and then we shall maybe also complete. I don't want to keep you so long.
No, I can't, because I later, someone else who wants to know the correspondent of the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, very good man, he's also interested in.
סוף רעיון ראשון, ועכשיו נתחיל ברעיון השני, המשלים ב6 ביולי 1993. אנחנו מתחילים את הרעיון השני עם אריה הנדלר ב6 ביולי 1993. אני אבקש שהתה תהיה דווקא קרוב אליך יותר מאשר אליי, זה אתה חשוב, לא אני. אנחנו כבר דיברנו באופן כללי על הפעילות שלך אחרי המלחמה. אני הייתי רוצה לשאול אותך עכשיו, אתה מעדיף באנגלית? אני מוכנה באנגלית, עשינו בכמה קודמת באנגלית.
באנגלית יותר קל עכשיו.
אוקיי, let's talk English. About your activity concerning the relief work in Germany after the war. I would like to be more specific about it. And first of all, I got the impression from what you told me last time, but also from other people, that although the relief work was initiated maybe and organized by the CBF, nevertheless, most or a large part of the workers were actually Zionist, active Zionists, either Bachad,
not only
or Habonim or other Chalutz members.
That's exactly the point. You're completely correct. What really happened throughout the war, Bachad and Chalutz in England, we worked closely together. That I must say is number one. You know, people like Fritz Lichtenstein, Peretz Leschen, Marduk Shatner.
Marduk Shatner.
Marduk. מרדכי שטנר, ואז היה מרדוק שטנר. ואני מוכרח לומר, כשאני הגעתי ללונדון, היה עוד טדי קולק, הוא היה שליח של הבונים באנגליה, והוא עזב באמת בדיוק כשאני הגעתי. Let's say it in English, I continue. Now, as I said, during the war, our job was, we all worked together. Let's say I built up Bachat and Bnei Akiva, the others built up Halut, we built Hachsharot, we brought people from Germany and from other countries. And of course, immediately when war finished, in reality we prepared it beforehand. We, now don't mind saying it clearly, we influenced the people of we influenced the people of the CBF, and even there were people like Adler Rudel, you heard his name several times, who were all committed Zionists. We made sure that the British Jewish institutions like the CBF and the Jewish Refugee Committee, we were really behind all these efforts, and we persuaded them, and we received the greatest help at that time from Professor Norman Bentwich, who on the one hand was obviously a leading British Jew, almost the leading British Jew in this field. He was a committed Zionist, very much connected with Zionism. He had his views, but he was a man committed to it. Professor Bentwich, together with us, we really gave the direction to develop the Jewish relief units, where we then took most of them, our own Havarim, those Hechalutz people, Habunim, Bachat, Bnei Akiva type of people. One of them is still working in the joint here now, Abraham, Stanley Abramovich, you may have heard his name, he's still working at now. Because he was one of those, there are other people who are now in this country, some of them are in England. We formed the relief unit. It had to be done, it could be done under a Zionist name, because you must remember the attitude of the British government at the time. We could not speak of Zionism at that time.
But was it also due to the fact that the British, the head of the organization of British Jewry was a roof organization of all organizations, not only Zionism?
No. Let me put it like this. There was no roof organization. There was always the Board of Deputies. Yes. The Board of Deputies did not deal much with these things. The Board of Deputies was a kind of a political, until today we are quite active in, it's a body which represents the political interests of British Jewry, all united. And then there was a Central British Fund and the Jewish Refugee Committee, that was something practically the same, with the main task to help those refugees who were already in England, and at the same time we prepared the ground together with them. There was no discrepancy to prepare the ground for the establishment of Jewish relief units, which went in practically British uniform. When I went to Germany at the time, at the end of the war, I went in the British uniform, and it was done under the heading of, as you say, of the CBF, of the Jewish Refugee Committee, but in reality we did it all, now I can say it openly, we did it all in connection with the so-called political department of the World Science Organization, that was Moshe Shattuck at the time, who came several times to England during the war, with a view of persuading the British government to allow the establishment of the Jewish Brigade. And our Jewish relief unit was of course not in a military unit, but it was all in the same direction. For instance, what did we do both in Hechalutz and Bachat? Our Havarim who we trained in our Hachsharot in England, we then also, I wouldn't say persuaded them, it was a kind of education, they also then joined either the British Pioneer Corps, which was part of the British Army, and later we took these Havarim Chalutzim and they became members of the Jewish Brigade. My brother-in-law, who is today Israel Redner, now Israel Rabeh, who is one of the founders of Kibbutz Lavi. Israel Redner was his name, then Israel Rave. Not Israel Rave. He and I must say others, we sent them, some we sent into the relief units, some we sent direct to the brigade, some we sent from the Hachsharot almost illegally to Marseille to be those who, to the Exodus, from this Israel Redner and others, Benno Penner, now Issachar Ben David, one of the Vatikim of Kibbutz Tiratzvi, still there today. These were people who we sent on the Exodus to do work on the boats, and then later some of them were taken to Cyprus. They in Cyprus, in the camps, were really those who both from us and from the Yishuv got the directions, and in fact Israel, Issachar Ben David always remembers when Golda Meir visited the camp in Cyprus. You know, she visited the camp, and she remembered capacity. She was political department, we called it, and they were together, and she was prime minister. She later kept in touch with this happening because she remembered him. She was a person with a tremendous personality. And our job in London was to organize all that and to make sure that our Hagit should get there. And I'll give you a small example, which is like an anecdote, which is both positive and negative for the British. I remember when was the Exodus there in Marseille.
I think that you
did I mention it?
Yes, they knew exactly where you were going.
Exactly, yes. Because I'm glad that you remember this. Because they knew exactly what we were doing. That we, on the one hand, it was forbidden. On the other hand, they knew what we were doing. And I would say, in a way, they did not restrict us in our activities.
Did you have the encouragement of the CBF people who were not Zionists?
Yes, I must say 100%. There were sometimes some individuals in councils who said, look, we should not do anything which is against British interests. So we explained to them that's nothing against British interests, and there was no resistance against us. It is true, we used the men like Norman Bentridge, or there was later Lady Henriquez.
Yes, she was the head of the German department.
Yes, that's it, you see, we speak in the same language. But I must say, even if they regarded themselves...
She was completely non-Zionist.
Completely, and her husband before was completely non-Zionist. But I want to say, I want to stress it, since we were very active and they liked our activity, we had sometimes difference of opinion. Let's say we had difference of opinion on an issue when we did not like that they sent children to non-Jewish homes, particularly the non-religious, the religious, but also the Haluts. They did not like that people were sent away from center of Jewish life. And they said to us, look, why are you worried about these things? First of all, you've got to save people and forget your ideological motivation. That was a certain discussion which we had, but I had a strong difference of opinion, which is, I don't know whether I mentioned last time, it's also like anecdotes. There was at that time the president of the United Synagogue. He was the most powerful Jew, I must say. He was not the president of the Board of Deputies, he was not the president of CBF,
but of the
United Synagogue. But that was not his strength. His strength was that he has a little position. He was the managing director of Shell. Now you know what Shell means. He was not only managing director of Sir Robert Valley Cohen. He was not only managing director of Shell. He was at the same time the main advisor to to the government on everything connected with Jewish matters. Formerly he was the advisor to the Minister of Food in connection with kashrut, but in reality his strength was, because he was so, I don't want to say that even he was in charge of kashrut, he was not the most observant person, but I must say a very committed Jew. But he was clearly, I wouldn't say anti-Zionist, but he was clearly non-Zionist. And I, as a young man, a refugee, bloody German refugee where I was, and he was with Sir Robert Cohen, and we had constantly, and we worked in the same building. My head office at that time was in House on the 5th floor, which was owned by until today, by the United Synagogue. We always had various offices in all sorts of places, but Bachat had its main office all the time in House. And I remember we had always, during the bombing, there was a big shelter in the ground basement. It all still stands.
Yes.
And we had a club of all officials who worked in that building, all Jewish officials, Board of Deputies, United Synagogue, Bachat, various organizations for Tal Yusalia. We met every Tuesday at lunchtime and there were lectures on Zionism and Jewish life during the war, when there was the bombing. And we were meeting always, we were very peaceful. And I remember Shaban Shatok spoke sometimes on Tuesday lunchtime, Raf Maimon, then Raf Fishman. And once I remember this little Arie Haendler, who was, he was a young refugee boy. Now I must say it in favor of this Robert Cohen. I once gave a lecture on our aims in Palestine. It was quite well attended, all the staff, only staff members of the building. And suddenly when I started speaking, who comes in the back, and he sat down in the back? Sir Robert Cohen. It was of course an honor for me that he came. I didn't believe it. At the same time I said to myself, Sir Robert Cohen comes, that means he will want to ask some hard questions, yes, to argue. Yes. And that's what really happened. I spoke. 20 minutes more. Yes. So while you mentioned it, so he was sitting there and I knew he would ask her. And he not only asked questions, he got up and he spoke strongly in a very polite manner. So I was saying to me, look, Mr. Haendler, you are a young man. I know what you want. You want the state of Israel, but you must forget about it. There is no chance that there will be a state of Israel. Not only that, the Jews of the world are not necessarily all Zionists, and therefore don't force the issue and don't do anything which might hinder the war effort. And I answered it. I don't have to mention what I answered. And I must say, I respected A, that he came, B, his honesty of discussing it with me. Who am I? I mean, he was serious at that time already. He was a top man. Churchill, I would say, took his advice on many fields. And I was therefore, when you asked me whether they were against us, they did not hinder our activities. They told us often that we are too young, or that we don't understand the real situation, that the main thing is to win the war, which was true, and not to be and not to forget the main issue. We have to help the Jews wherever they are, but don't bring in, they said to us, the Zionist angle. And we told them, that was our argument. I remember really Adler Rüde was one of those, Martin Schatten, Mordechai Schattner, Fritz Leschen, and all of them. What was our argument? We said to them, look, of course that has to be done. But if we bring the Jews to this country, if they are trained and all that, and in the end, if we will not get as a final result after what happens now in New York, that so many people are killed and will be killed. It was in the middle of the war, don't forget. Then if we do not at least get the state of Israel as the end product of all our efforts, then everything was in vain. Yeah, they didn't agree with us. That was really now I come back to the, sorry.
You said that you, Bachad, Chalutz, and so on, you were organizing the people to be sent to as the relief workers as well as members of the brigade. What does it mean you were organizing? You mean, did you prepare, I concentrate now only on the relief work.
No, I tell you exactly what we did. We choose the people, we went and persuaded men and women, boys and girls, we persuaded them to do this work.
You did not sit and wait for volunteers.
No, we spoke to,
you recruited the people.
Of course, we recruited to people, and amongst them not always people who were wild Zionists. I remember there's one man who's now famous, graphic artist, designer, you must have heard his name, Abraham Games. Just as an example, very interesting.
Abraham Games?
Still Games, he's still thank God alive in London. He's 82 now, We persuaded them, we said, this is your job, and this is our job. And they then undertook this work. Now, the second thing what we did, which is important, once they were in the field, we kept in touch with them. We did not rely on what the CBF sent them, some circulars what to do or not to do. We remained direct in contact with them. I visited them, let's say,
in Germany?
Yes, of course, in the field, and we made sure that we sent them, I don't mind telling you, now I can say it, we sent them books, not for themselves, but we sent them books for distribution, Zionist material, articles, pamphlets on Zionism, for the DPs, for the people in the camps. We sent them food, material help, so that when they, you know, it is when you are in a DP camp and you come as a lead worker and you talk whatever you like, if you don't give also practical help, by the, I must say here, the joint was then
much wealthier.
Not a wealthier, but the joint was first class in this respect. You could, and when I today have to compare joint, it's not fair what I said, but I have to say the joint with the CBF. CBF, of course, were smaller, not so strong, but the joint understood very well people, our aims with regard to Palestine, Israel, more than the CBF people. For good reasons. You know, American Jewry had a different attitude at that time, and I don't need to tell you men like Joseph Schwartz, who was the head of Joint, the most important, not in Europe, he was also responsible director of Joint in America, but he was sitting in Europe, he was working, and even formally he was not working as part of the Zionist movement. He was completely committed to our aims and much more than the CBF type of people. From the CBF there was a person, very fine woman, she's still alive. She was a secretary person of Otto Schiff. No, she was again, Petri, funny enough, where we had sometimes arguments. She came from a very Jewish Orthodox background. You know, she is the daughter of Rav Victor Schoenfeld. And Victor Schoenfeld is the one who was the first person who built Victor Schoenfeld, who helped Rav Maimon and Rav Meir Berlin to start the first religious Mizrahi schools in this country.
He
was sent from London. He went from England to Palestine. Yes, and but he then turned a little bit right wing, and his daughter, I was not kind, I worked very well with her together, Mrs. Peter, she was for a time, she had a very anti-Zionist attitude, like her brother, Rabbi Schoenfeld, who did wonderful work, but he became his father and mother, Mrs. Rachel Schoenfeld, his mother was my, you wouldn't believe it, I appointed her organizer in my Bachat fellowship work. She was a real Mizrahi Zionist woman, 100%. But the son, Rabbi Schoenfeld, he was a wonderful person.
The son-in-law of Rabbi Hertz, you mean?
The son-in-law of Rabbi Hertz.
He was the head of the Chief Rabbi's Emergency Council.
That's right, and he was also president of Mizrahi. But the son-in-law, Schoenfeld, was more Aguda inclined.
No, the son-in-law, he was the head of the
he was the executive director.
He was Aguda.
He was Aguda.
Yes.
He was Schoenfeld, I would say.
Yes. I didn't know this connection. This is very interesting.
Until after the war, I was for many years, until today, the head of the Torah department of the Zionist World Movement, and Rabbi Schoenfeld, he created the Hasmonean schools in London. My children went to, and he always had this Aguda line, but we sent Morim Shlichim from Israel to the Hasmonean schools. He didn't like it at the beginning because he said, the Mizrahi Zionists are not so happy. But we had a deal between us. He said, look, Arie, you can send me your shlichim and write letters to me. Only one thing I want of you. When you send me letters that, let's say, Shimon Levi is going tomorrow to be a teacher in Hasmonean.
In the what?
In Hasmonean, Hashmonaim. That's Sefer Hashmonaim. That is, even until today, the top Jewish grammar school, Orthodox. But most of the children are Zionist, Bnei Akiva type of children. But you will laugh. When he made a deal with me, he said, I'll accept your teachers from our Mizrahi Torah department here, which was the Zionist organization, still exists, but when you write to me, don't write, cut off the word, the word Zionist organization. Torah department that can remain. Anyway, just coming back, so Mrs. Peter's sister, she was not so that, she was not so orthodox.
We mentioned her name because you try to remember the name of the secretary.
Yes, that's bad.
Yes,
she's still alive. She was a secretary, Otto Schiff. You heard the
Otto Schiff,
that's right, he was the chairman of the committee, he was one of the ships in America, and his personal secretary,
never mind, we should find it.
She's still around, thank God. She then was made the general secretary of the CBF, Jewish Refugee Committee, and all these things. She was not, until today, she's not Jewish. A fine woman, very pro-Jewish, as you can imagine. But at that time, when we did the Relief Unit and all these things, she, like some of her colleagues, always, they didn't tell you what the Stammund, what we really had in mind. I must say they were fair. But they always told us, don't mix politics in your relief, in our relief world. And there we used, I must say, Norman Bentridge, who knew exactly what it's all about. He would sometimes tell us, don't shout about it, but our real aims, with regard to Israel, Palestine. But he was 100% with us. So it was a good combination. He was a former head. So that was all right. Now,
did you prepare the people before going?
Yes, I just want to good that you asked this question. We prepared them properly. There were seminars. That's it's true. That is why I phoned you, because family. We will continue.
Okay, just
this one, I must know, but I would like to mention this. It's rather important. All of them who went, we took them to proper courses, seminars, everything connected with their formal relief work, but they received from us direct education or instructions in what to do in the camps, both with regard to encouraging people to go on Aliyah, how to take the youngsters to use Aliyah, how to take those in the right age group into Hachsharot. All this the relief workers did, and I must say we were also very much encouraged, I must mention this, by our Jewish chaplains. The British Army chaplain, like let's say Reverend Harman, the late Morris Jaffe, Morris Jaffe. There are many others who, I don't mind saying it clearly, in reality it's not nice to put it like this, they also received almost instructions from us what to do because the chaplains were allowed by the British Army authorities. They were army people. They were allowed to go to the refugee camps, and it was one of their jobs, particularly when war finished and soon afterwards, particularly let's say from Britain in the British zone, based in that area. And I don't mind saying they really did exactly what we wanted them to do. And many of them also later went on Aliyah. So you don't mind, it's not nice that
No, it's okay.
Now I promise you